The more you listen, the more you know. This is Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.
Let's talk a little bit about what this recovery is going to look like, because we've been talking about this as though it's going to be a kind of a Great Depression type thing, but that I want to tell you that's only one view. There are other people who say that it's not going to be like that. And one of the reasons why they say that is what happened in China. I'm going to show you something here. We'll put the picture up on the screen. This is what happened in China. China was moving along here, and they saw a very drastic decline over a 2-month period. Their PMI, which is an index that they use for manufacturing, it collapsed. And then once the pandemic passed, people are returning to work, you can see this really sharp increase. But the one thing I want you to notice is that the point at which it comes back isn't quite at the level at the point when it fell. So it's not a recovery that comes back to the same point. It'll come back a little bit to a lesser point. Okay, so and then that'll be the baseline. We'll lose some amount.
And that was a really fast recovery too. You know, it's already back up to the 50 mark.
And to hear that, let's listen to this clip here.
What's happened is that the central banks are doing everything they can, and it seems to be working to keep the financial markets and the financial system operating. So it looks very unlikely that we'll have a financial crisis, although certain things could still go wrong here and there, but we probably very likely won't have a financial crisis in a kind of systemic sense like in 2008, 2009. Then the fiscal side is stepping up to the plate to cushion the blow in private spending, so that'll stabilize the economy. And then eventually what we should have is a recovery, a bit of a bounce back as pent-up demand is released. And then over time, the economy normalizes as the public health crisis comes to an end. As that process unfolds, I think we'll see some fairly rapid healing. And we should start to see those flows of private spending, both domestic and international, start to resume. Now, having said that, I don't think we should expect a kind of sustained, very rapid, very complete V-shaped bounce. What I think we should expect to see maybe is something a bit more like a square root, right, where we have a V-shaped bounce back and then things calm down and gradually recover again. Now, if that's the path we take, over a period of time, we should have a kind of resurgence in those kinds of, that kind of interest by both foreign and domestic players in each major market.
Okay, he's hoping to see the V shape on the graph bouncing back. Maybe it won't bounce immediately back to where we were before, but eventually we might work towards where we were before.
You know, you're good at mathematics, so I think you've caught something here. First of all, if you have to actually look at what a square root looks like, the thing goes up higher than where it was before. So that guy didn't mean that. I don't think that guy actually meant square root, but I understood what he did mean, the concept. The point is you go down and you do have a sharp return, but it's not at that peak where it was. It's going to be sort of like it was in China. That's the argument.
Yeah,
that's the perspective. Yeah, so it'll be a little bit lower and slog along at that. So we'll have the new normal will be a little bit lower. By the way, some people wonder whether the China thing is something that we can apply, whether that economic model is something we can apply here. Let's listen to this.
Stephen, mixed opinions as to whether we can use China as a template for what we could see play out here in the U.S. Most health officials seem to be using Italy as a case study. But given your expertise in China, what do you make of Beijing's response thus far to the coronavirus?
Look, I think we can definitely utilize the templates in China and in South Korea. And let's hope we don't have to rely on the trajectory for Italy. But China clearly did draconian quarantines, containments and restrictions on travel. And 8 weeks of that has allowed them to begin to move out on the other side in terms of production, although the tracking data that I see in terms of consumption still remains sharply depressed. So even under the Chinese template, the recovery is still a very iffy one in many respects. But
he basically confirmed what we've said so far. There's a bounce back, but it's kind of a weird bounce back because the new normal is lower than the old normal.
Things look kind of bleak.
Well, I mean, the argument would be they don't look bleak. They look blah. It definitely is going to bounce back, but when it bounces back, it's going to be in a funk. I mean, what kind of society is it going to be? Is it going to be really going to have a lot of consumption going on? Is it really going to be just back to normal? Or we're going to have to walk this thing back in? And once we walk it back in, what kind of damage is going to be there? One of the problems is this: the economy is not a light bulb. You don't turn it on and off. You know, it's almost
Right.
it's almost like time. You can't stop time. You can't stop an economy. Everything gets put on the ledger. If you don't pay the bill for this month or for that month, it's on the ledger. And if the balance sheet doesn't add up, then you have bankruptcies that increase. You know, if you lose your job, then all of a sudden, who says that demand is going to be there when the economy starts again? I mean, you're going to have to. It's not a light bulb that goes on and off. To hear that, let's listen to Kudlow here.
We have had a number of conversations. You heard the president again yesterday at the news conference repeat his desire to get the economy reopened as soon as possible. He doesn't want the cure to be worse than the problem. I believe that's how he puts it, in quote unquote. I saw Bill Gates on TV yesterday suggesting, you know, maybe some stability by the end of this month. Let us hope and pray that's even possible. How we can work hand in hand with the health people, maybe to gradually reopen the economy, open chunks of the economy, stay away from the worst hot zones. There's a lot of scenarios here, and I don't want to get it. It's not my area of expertise.
He's really hoping for that bounce back. We're not going to bounce back all the way to where we were before. I mean, there's going to be a lot of issues that will take time to rebuild.
I thought it was interesting that he said that he's thinking about opening chunks of the economy. And
Yeah. Some sources are saying that they want to start testing people for the antibody so that people who have already been infected and recovered, putting those people back in the workforce.
one of the interesting things that you might see happen in terms of the politics of this is after about a month passes, I think there's going to be an interesting division about what's supposed to happen. You know, right now, at the very beginning, everyone was pretty much all on the same page regarding the need to flatten the curve. And then once the curve gets flattened, I think there's going to be an interesting discussion about how do you go forward. And I think you're going to see some people who are very concerned about this business picture and whether this thing is going to melt down into something really disastrous, like a Great Depression kind of thing. They're going to want to talk about moving this forward, whereas you might get a different kind of a reaction from people who are maybe don't believe that that's going to happen, or they're more concerned with, I don't know what you'd call it, more concerned with being cautious. This is pretty much what Janet Yellen was talking about here.
People are wondering if this could look like a V or a U or a W. Do you have any sense of what recovery looks like?
Well, a V, which is what we're all hoping for, is really a best case scenario. And if activity could begin to resume, as many assume, in June, and maybe be back to something more normal by the summer, I think a V is possible, but I am worried that the outcome will be worse. And it really depends, to my mind, on just how much damage is done during the time that the economy is shut down in the way it is now. If households have run down their savings and had to dip into retirement savings, or are behind on their bills and have higher debt and lower wealth, their spending patterns are not likely to go back to what they were. The corporate distress that we're seeing, and that may get worse, may leave companies. I'm afraid we will see bankruptcies, and companies may end up with debt burdens that make them unwilling to restore investment spending or rehire workers. And the more damage of that sort that's done, the more likely we're to see a U. And there are worse letters too, like L, and I hope we don't see something like that.
There are worse letters like L. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, we're at the decline, hopefully at the basin of this valley. She said that we can hope for a V where we jump back up, but most likely a U, and we just hope we don't see an L. Never thought I'd be talking about letters in this way, but...
Yeah, I mean, remember, it took 25 years in the Great Depression to get the stock market back. And when you look at the GDP, which is the actual wealth, the actual size of the economy, it took, I think, about 12 years for the United States GDP to return to what it was when the crash happened. And you don't want to spend 12 years just getting back to the same level. What you want to do is increase. So it took actually World War II to get the GDP back on a trajectory. It's about 15 years in. I have a graph here I can put up and show this to you. If we apply trajectory logic, you're not talking about trying to get the size of the economy back to the way it was yesterday. What you're doing is you want the size of the economy to get back on the trajectory path to where it was and where it was going. A U would be very bad because it would mean it would take a long time to dig out from under this. A V is going to mean that it's going to bounce back, but what may happen is it's going to bounce back, but it's going to be, the new normal is going to be, I think, be lower. And so I think that we'll just start with a new baseline, whatever that's going to be. We're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah.
We can't say until next week, but we can say until next time.
Yeah.
Politics without allegiance. You're listening to Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.
Dr. Wilson, did you know that all of our listeners can now listen to our podcast on any smart device?
That's right. You just say, "Hey Alexa, play the podcast Good Politics."
Hey, Doc, thanks for bleeping that wake word out. And hey, guys, you could also tell Siri or Google on your Android or Google Nest device. So when you get home, try it out.